December 12th, 2012 to order. Ms. Witkowski, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mr. Nielsen?
Here.
Mrs. Klein?
Here.
Mrs. Larson?
Here.
Mrs. Schluter?
Here.
Mr. Trailer?
Here.
Mrs. Evans?
Here.
And I am also present.
Thank you. Has the meeting been properly posted, Dr. Pence?
Yes.
Thank you. Please rise and join us for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Item number 3 on the agenda, per board policy, we allow up to 15 minutes of resident comment. Would anyone like to make a comment? Hearing none, we'll move on to agenda item number 4, the Friends of Franklin Public Schools recognition, and we'll have Dr. Patz and Mrs. Schluter come forward.
Good evening, everybody. This is one of the more fun things that we do at our board meetings when we get a chance to acknowledge people for what they do to assist us, particularly our kids in our school district. Our process for doing this is we get nominations from our staff regarding people that contribute a great deal within our buildings and towards kids. So tonight is a night, and we do this often once a quarter, where we have an opportunity to bring both the nominees and the presenters, obviously, and the recipients together to acknowledge them and show a small sign, at least, of our appreciation for all that you do for our schools. So what our process will be is very simple. We'll just call out some people and have you come up, and we'd like you people who made the nominations to just say a few words about why you nominated the individual that you did. And then we'll do that on this side, and then we're going to sort of scurry over to that side. And if you stay up here, please, we'd like to take a group picture at the end. So I think we can go over there. For our first nominee, I'm going to have Brian Devilack come forward. Brian. And Brian nominated Marty Abramson from Lowe's of Franklin. People in this room, many of us have seen these guys up here before. Lowe's and Marty have done a great deal to assist our district, but Brian, I'll let you tell a little bit more about why you nominated Marty.
My name is Brian Devilack. There's basically a group project. We got together about a year ago, correct? What we ended up doing is we wanted to do a project, outreach project for the community and get our kids back involved in the community. One of the aspects that myself and Marta, when we came together, we wanted to get something where the kids had a tangible item where they could go out, design it, build it, and actually give back to what they started. A lot of these kids went through the Franklin Little League program. So what we did is we built brand new dugouts, and did some mulching. We painted the press box. Marty was one of the sponsors that came on. He sponsored more than just giving money donation. He actually developed a plan and got all his employees, which is probably a heck of a lot more money than what you actually donated for the labor-wise on it. We had as many as 8 to 10 people over there from Lowe's. We were there for a couple days, bought the kids lunches, actually did give the kids a hard time with me. So I got to appreciate it very much.
Real life experience.
Real life experience. So it was a fantastic project that we got, and I really, this is what the partnerships are all about. And this is what I really think we need to be going towards an educational system. We're held accountable to the state, to the city, to the Franklin League, and Marty was a great ally and partner in everything that we did. And I would like to introduce him and thank Marty for what he did.
Can you stand together so I can get a picture of the three of you, please?
I think I'd be the tallest person here, right?
Thank you, Marty. Thank you, Lowe's. It's always nice to see Brian here presenting because he cleans up really good. Yeah. We tease him about it, but Brian is a fantastic teacher in our high school and our tech area and is doing some tremendous things and is very excited and motivated to keep us going. So I'm sure we're going to see him here again. Next, I'd like to call Dr. Wendy Dezurek forward, please. And she has nominated the Franklin Education Foundation to receive an award. And we'd like to also have Tito Alvarez and Marlene Vidal please come forward.
Props, of course. So it's my honor to present
representing a large foundation board, and Marlene Vidal, who's worked for, I'm not sure how many years, 8 years. 8 years, and I know Tino's been on the board several years as well. He's president this year, but he served in every role I can think of while I was there. And sitting in my chair as director of instruction, I have the opportunity to work with both of them often, because what they do is support the curriculum initiatives that come through, oftentimes the review process, but many times the passion of teachers that are out in the building. And I think my paragraph kind of sums it up. Since their inception in 1996, the foundation poured over $1 million into materials and supplies directly related to the implementation of high-quality curriculum. Our elementary classrooms are full of Just Right books. That's one of the big grants they funded. The middle school sports a fully equipped digital art lab. And our high school tech ed area program has industry standard machinery. All of that allows our students to be career or college ready, because that's what we're looking for. And so they get to see the impact, but it's their extras that kind of make Franklin extra special. So none of this happens without hours and hours of work, because they fundraise all of that $1 million. And if you've ever worked on a fundraiser, that's why I have my little props here, because Marlene knows what it's like to work with a barrel in one piece. Because she's constantly doing that. And my final quote in my writing was, never doubt that a small group of thoughtful, committed citizens can change the world. Indeed, it's the only thing that has, and Margaret Mead said that well, and I got Tina needed to be reminded that he has changed Franklin's little girl. So thank you both of you.
Next, I'd like to call Courtney Lucasakis. Courtney nominated the Franklin Health Department, and here to accept the award tonight is Kathy Hahn from the Public Health Department. So Courtney, I'll let you say a few nice things about Kathy.
Well, first off, I tried to get everything that Kathy does on one sheet, and that was very, very difficult to do. So this is just a small glimpse of everything that she does for the students in our district. She has been instrumental with the work of students in the community by, first off, running a group called Franklin Teens Fighting Tobacco. That consists of middle school and high school students. And I just found out that 2 of them will be actually meeting a state senator this Friday, right? Senator Mary Lozich. So pretty neat opportunities. The environment that they have fosters their leadership abilities, as well as you can see the students' passion for their purpose, which is instrumental with these students, especially at their age group. She has been instrumental in a community group called Franklin Area Parents and Students United, also known as FAPS. Her involvement has brought awareness to the community through town hall meetings, and the Parents Who Host Lose the Most. That whole thing was because of Kathy. Kathy's effort to keep our schools drug-free has positively and directly affected our students. I can think of a few in particular. As we all know, a healthy child can learn better. So thank you, Kathy, for all that you do.
I should also tell you that you'll be able to watch this on our website. We do video our meetings now, so everything is up there. You'll be able to take a look at these presentations on it as well. Next, I'd like to call Maria Jensen forward. And Maria has nominated Joey Merkin. I hope I pronounced that right. If I didn't, I apologize. And Joey is a volunteer at Ben Franklin, and so Maria, would you please allow us to hear some nice things? Kathy.
Sure. I'm a second grade teacher at Ben Franklin, and Joey Mershon has been working with me for the last 3 years. I had her daughter 3 years ago, but yet she still comes back like a cat. She makes it possible for kids to get a more personalized learning experience in my classroom. She has done small group instruction for both math and science. She's also done it for reading and writing. And I can give her a group of kids, and she just has this wonderful knack of being able to approach things in different ways to try to help kids who are struggling be able to understand the curriculum. And it's just so wonderful to have such a fabulous parent who loves to come in. And when I nominated her and she found out, she said, you know, this is not the reason why I do this. I know that, and that's why you're so deserving of something, to be able to be recognized for all the wonderful things that she does. I'm just so thankful.
Thank you. And next, Terry Tubbs. Terry, could you come forward, please? Terry has nominated Arlene Schrader, who is a volunteer at Country Dale. So Terry, tell us a little bit about Arlene.
Hi, I'm Terry Tubbs, and I'm the secretary at Country Dale Elementary, and I'm here to honor Arlene. This is just my second year at Country Dale, but my first year last year, I was told about Arlene. Arlene comes in and volunteers. Who's Arlene? Who's Arlene? She finally comes in and introduces herself, and so I'm thinking, oh, okay. Arlene must be in our building probably 2 to 3 times a week. And she's not just there for an hour. She's there for 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, sometimes even longer. So I had to figure out, what does Arlene do when she's here? Because I'm in the office, I have no idea, but she's scurrying around the building. You can see her anywhere. She could be in the science room, organizing labs for upper grade levels. She could be in the back running copies. She could be in Patricia Sneed's room, organizing Read to Succeed. She could be at the small table, working with a group of kids that are struggling with things. So anywhere you're going in the building, you can see Arlene. The reason that I nominated her is this past year, at the end of the year, we had 4 classrooms moved. So we're talking our 6th grade and our 4th grade on opposite ends of the building. Literally had to take all these 4 and switch them. And I would say for 2 or 3 days straight, you could see Arlene with carts full of classroom supplies, anything. And she helped these classrooms move from one side of the building to the next. And I can't tell you, I know those teachers were just extremely grateful for the time and effort that she put into that. So I just wanted to say thank you. We love having you. We love continuing having you. And I think the most important thing is to know that she doesn't have any children in the district. She does this just out of the kindness of her heart. So I think that's tremendous for somebody to be able to do that and to give back to our community, and especially to our schools and our children. So thank you very much.
And next I'd like to call Allison Emhofer up, make a presentation to Dr. Bill Weiss. Hope I said that right. Weiss, I'm sorry, Bill. And Bill's an MHS parent and a volunteer to our band program. Allie?
Dr. Weiss has a son, Justin, in the band program, who's a senior now. He was part of my first group of freshmen. So I've had the pleasure of working with Justin and his family for the past 4 years. And we have so many supportive parents in the music department, but Dr. Weiss has really gone above and beyond with all that he's done. He's chaperoned many field trips. He's been a sound engineer for our jazz cabaret, lending his own equipment for that. Every Wednesday night during the marching band season, he's there videotaping our rehearsals so we can study them and evaluate them to improve our performance. This past marching season, we also had some equipment that needed to be improved, and even something that broke, and he came in for several weekends and evenings to help with that. So I am just so grateful for everything that you've done, and I really appreciate how you helped the music department.
There you go. We have one more person that will be recognizing at our January board meeting, and that would be Nancy Meyer, a volunteer at Pleasant View. She was nominated by Elizabeth Berlin, so we'll be making that presentation at that time. All of our volunteers and people that support our district, on behalf of the district, we appreciate all you do. The people that nominated you are phenomenal people as well, so I think that's what makes our district such an outstanding district, is we have the resources of the human capital to put things together for kids, and we thank all of you. So with that, would you all just sort of shift around like set the picture? And Amy, would you please stand maybe in the middle, please?
I'll stand behind you. Sure.
Literally too tall up in front.
You need to show people forward. I'm not going to be able to. Here we go. Right there you are. Okay, just a couple really quick.
And thank you all for coming. Appreciate it.
Thank you and congratulations. The next item on the agenda is item number 5, approval of the agenda. And I've had a request to move item 9D, finance report, up to item A. If there are no objections to that from the board, do I have a motion to approve the agenda?
Make a motion to approve the agenda.
I'm sorry, I don't understand. We're moving what?
There's been a request to move item D, finance report, up to, up above item A.
Okay. Oh, I see, just the order of the reports?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have a motion by Mrs. Klein. Is there a second?
A second.
Second by Mrs. Schlueter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. The next item is item 6, consent agenda. Is there any board member that would like to remove an item from the consent agenda? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving consent agenda items A through B, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, abstention, motion carries. Item 7, school board announcements. Does any board member have a school board announcement?
I'd just like to say, speaking of the music program, they're having a cookie walk at the high school Saturday morning, so if anybody likes Christmas cookies but doesn't have time to make them themselves, you can go there, and for a very reasonable price, you can purchase cookies by the pound or by the tray full, and they're all going to be homemade by music parents.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Also, I did attend the middle school recognition breakfast this morning. Had some wonderful parents, and of course our students were outstanding. I also got a chance to attend the orchestra concert at the middle school, which was a chance to see some of the changes in the program kind of evident. Some of the music they played, I thought. And I also did get a chance to attend the city tree lighting at the library. And I learned that our mayor has a wonderful singing voice.
Oh, yes, he does.
And I did also meet a senior citizen who kind of asked me about, I guess in the past we did have band members there. I'm not sure how that normally works, but I'll just follow up with the band department.
Thank you.
I had the opportunity to attend several wrestling meets so far this year. Very excited about that. Our team is currently 2-0 in our conference. We beat Oak Creek last Thursday, 61-9. They've attended 2 major tournaments, one in Kaukauna and one in Bayport. Those were very exciting. And they are wrestling tomorrow night at Racine Horlick at 7 o'clock.
Thank you. Anyone else?
This week is Music Week. I know that we had the orchestra on Monday, right?
Right.
And then we had the band at Forest Park Middle School last night, and there's some more tonight, and then tomorrow is choir. So I was there last night, I'll be there tomorrow night. And with the cookie walk, I know Stephanie is helping bake some of those right now with some of her senior friends, so that should be good.
All right, thank you. Next item is the school board calendar. We have January 9th, 2012, board meeting at Pleasant View Elementary at 6 o'clock p.m. January 23rd, 2012, a board meeting here at the Education and Community Center, also at 6 o'clock p.m. Item 9, reports and presentations. We'll start with D, finance report. Resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of a $10 million bond anticipation notes pursuant to Section 67.12 sub 1, sub B, Wisconsin State statutes. Dr. Mills, Mr. Moser, sorry.
Yes, thank you. As I talked about at the last meeting, although we had over $30 million approved, really we're only going out now for $10 million, and these will be short-term notes that will take us into next year. September is the latest we'll go. We'll probably call them after May 1st, but we're going out now to get the low rates because these notes would be bank qualified. And we did that today. We worked through Robert W. Baird, and we did get a nice low interest rate of 1.08%, the true interest cost. It's a nice thing the district can do that we can't do personally. So it went real well. We had a strong interest in that, and as these usually go, we have them on the same day because the board needs to approve them right away, and then the closing on this won't take place until the 27th of December, and that's when we'll actually get the transaction and the cash coming to the district. So we need to approve the resolution, and you're really just, that's the title of the resolution in the agenda. You're approving that resolution to borrow the money through those notes, those short-term notes. And then I'll have paperwork for the officers to sign after the meeting. And then these we'll call again, we'll pay those off probably in May or June. And then we'll go out again for long-term bonds, and that would be the ones we would stick with, the 20-year bonds, to pay for the project. But this mechanism gets us the lowest rates, which is what we're after.
And this was competitively bid, correct? Was it competitively bid? Or
This one was not competitively bid.
Negotiated?
Yeah, it's negotiated because we had a really short time frame to get our official statement done and all of that, and we didn't feel that we could get it out fast enough for that, and since it's only really 5 months we're holding it, the long-term bonds will be competitively bid.
And who was, what bank bid? Or who got the?
I'm not sure. I didn't get the information on that, but I can get that to you.
So a motion has arisen out of the financial report, resolution, I'm looking for a motion, for resolution authorizing the issuance and sale of $10 million bond anticipation notes pursuant to section 67.12 sub 1 sub B, Wisconsin State statutes. Do I hear that motion?
I move.
Motion by Mrs. Witkowski. Is there a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, may I have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mrs. Schluter?
Aye.
Mr. Trailer?
Aye.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
And I also say yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. Next item is item A, Buildings and Grounds Annual Report. Mr. Cloutier.
Hello, everyone.
Hi.
I was interested to hear your board announcements, and I didn't want to miss an opportunity to talk about the fact that all those chairs set up, all those buy-in shelves that were set up, all that stuff that was moved around all the district, the Buildings and Grounds Department did that with a smile on their face. And I'm taking that.
And you did a fine job.
So, I believe you received in your packet 2 pieces from me. A copy of the long-range plan that I've given to you in the spring, June 6th, and then a report, which is the format we've used in the past, which shows all of the planned projects from the 5-year plan on the left side and the inevitable additional projects that happen on the left-hand side. So, as you can see, we went down the list and we were able to,
I think they can hear me, Mr. Bill.
I'm sure they can.
But as you can see, we went down the left side of the list. We were able to finish the wainscoting of the bathrooms at Ben Franklin, converting several of our lighting systems. The last piece, there's the one here at Countrydale, which was all the original parts of the building. Anything new in 1998 were already T8 and already converted to electronic ballasts and high-efficient lighting. But I just want to make mention that that's repeated really 3 times. Pleasant View, we did a little piece in the main office that we did, as well as Robinwood, we converted the lighting. For those of you who have children at Robinwood, you may have remembered the loud buzz and the egg crate. Well, actually, both buildings had that. The same type of light fixture that was in the schools when I went to school, and that was a very long time ago. And they were very loud, very buzzing, a lot of light lost up into the fixture itself. We replaced them with energy-efficient P8 lighting, as well as some controls, some daylighting, some simple daylighting controls that provides us with the outer half of the room. In other words, the part of the room that's closest to the windows, by code, needs to be controlled separately. So that is on a sensor, that is on an occupancy sensor that if you get enough light into the room, it'll turn those off automatically. And actually at Robinwood, it will dim them by 50%. The inner part of the room away from the windows is simply on a motion detector, occupancy sensor. So as long as people are in there moving, but if you forget to turn off the lights, they do turn off by themselves. So we've put in some energy efficient lighting. We have Pleasant View's now done. Really Forest Park is really the only one left with that type of old lighting system that's going to need to be replaced. We did Southwood Glen a few years ago. We also did another restroom at Countrydale. As we move from the front of the building towards the back, we're remodeling the restrooms. We're now into the middle. We have one more set, plus we have a smaller set off to the side that we'll do in future years. One of the things we tried to do was to help the evening, well, actually really student traffic, and so we widened the drive to the back of the back playground. We now use that as a staging area, because if you'll notice at our elementary schools, we have probably between 70 and 100 cars at nearly every elementary school at dismissal. And you need a place to stage them, especially if you're at Countrydale when you're on that narrow, rural North Cape Road. You get them out there, and now you've plugged up a main trunk, a county road. So we did that. One of the more interesting, and I think really interesting project for kids was Forest Park removing that wall to create a math lab. As you can see, it was relatively inexpensive. And I've been in the room, and it's very interesting for me, especially as a non-educator, to go into the room and you've got the same number of teachers per child. You've got about 4 classrooms there, and you've got about 4 teachers there. But you've got one teacher over here doing a lesson on a smart board over in one part of the room with a small group of kids. You've got another teacher over in this part of the room doing a lesson with another group of students, a different lesson. In the middle, you've got independent study children who are working independently and moving forward collaboratively. We have an attached room, and in that room you've got math going on that's probably, I'm guessing, I didn't go in that room, but I'm guessing more the traditional type of a teaching model. And then out in the hall you've got a teacher working with kids really one-on-one. So you've got a lot of different levels of education going on in the same room at the same time. And I thought it was very interesting to see, especially from a novice like me. So that's that. And as you can see, we did more projects. I could go over all of them if you want, but they are there. And if you have any questions about the left-handed list, I'd be willing to answer them at this point. Okay. Additional projects. Now these are the kinds of things that they come up at the last minute. They come up and they just make sense. A couple of examples would be late in the year. We started to have trouble with the east playground at Robinwood. First time ever in my career, the pea gravel was so old, and if you understand pea gravel, it doesn't. It's a clean stone, so it doesn't. It moves. It doesn't. It's not like traffic bond that has the fines in it that solidifies. Well, this stuff was so old that it actually had developed fines to the point of where it was solidifying. So we had to clean all of that out and replace the pea gravel. That's the one off the side of the cafeteria, Mr. Nielsen. Another one, as you jump down to those 2 in the middle for the high school, a vision window into metals, as well as the computerized, adding an air compressor for the computerized milling machine. One of the things that we talked about from the foundation was, Mr. DeBella talked about some up-to-date, I'm sorry, it was you, Wendy, talked about some up-to-date equipment that we now have, state-of-the-art equipment down there. And that one of those arrived this year. Well, we probably shouldn't let it sit there and we can't use it. So we needed to put in an air compressor to power the machinery. It's not within the purview of the foundation, so the school district did that. In addition to that, at that point, the teacher at the time suggested to me, well, you know, if you could just put a window in here, I've got a dead spot where I'm in this room and I can't see this corner of the room, or if I'm in that room, I can't see this corner of the room, so we put a window in there. So those two down in the middle there, the vision window in metals, as well as installing an air compressor for the computerized milling machine, were, I think, important projects that we needed to include, even though they weren't on the original plan. Another one would be Southwood Glen's new playground site work. When the PTO wants to give you $25,000 for a playground, we probably should invest $5,710 in making sure that the site works for it. So that's those kinds of things. And that's kind of how these additional projects come up and how they make it to the list. You can't plan for the PTO actually being ready at a time. Are there any questions?
You're going to talk about the plan also, or just the...
We certainly. This is a very fluid document. It evolves every year. Every year we write a 5-year plan, what we think will happen. So for example, on this one, there's not a lot of Forest Park on here. It's something we might want to put on there. Now that, you know, with the hopes of Forest Park. For example, in the second year, there was a section of roof that really needs to be taken care of. We probably want to do that soon, as an example. It has the type of deck that if we allow the roof to fail, that type of roof decking material, Tectum deck, can mold. And now you've got to replace the entire deck. So it's probably not a roof we want to allow to fail. So I think at some point in the near future, we're going to need to do that. As well as Dr. Patz has asked me to take a look at some of the what I would call the cultural things, the things that are really going to kind of change the flavor of that building. Let's start to replace the carpet. Let's start to replace sprucing up the wall covering. Let's take a look at lockers and see what's the best way to handle the lockers. These are the kinds of relatively inexpensive things that we can do to change the culture in that building as best we can. It's going to feel better when I'm in there, when the paint's brighter and the carpet's in good shape. You know, those kinds of things. And when my lockers are chipped up and look nice. So those are the kinds of things we're going to be trying to come up with a plan. I'll be meeting with Mrs. West and Chris Reuter, the assistant principal, Mr. Reuter, in the spring, to come up with a plan on how we're going to attack that over the next few years. In 1990, the referendum, the actual vote was 1997, but the referendum that built Ben Franklin and the cafeteria on the high school, at that time we tried to have Forest Park on the ballot as well, and it did not get support by the community, so we left it off. And we then made a concerted effort towards replacing the HVAC system in that building. So all of that's been replaced. The building is 100% air conditioned, but it did take us till, I want to say, 2002 to do that. Because you can eat an elephant, but you got to eat it one bite at a time. So we take our time and we do these things.
With the referendum, you were able to drop some stuff off of the list? Some repairs and stuff?
When we redo this list, we'll be taking some things off that will be taken care of. For example, there's some asbestos tile at the high school that we can take care of at this point. There's some HVAC units that are on the list here that we're going to be able to take care of. And we're working with the architects right now to make sure that they're included in the overall project.
And just move stuff forward?
And then we'll be able to move some stuff around. But as you can see, the high school's not...
A lot in there, yeah.
There's not a lot up front on the high school already. Mm-hmm. But what it does is as we the same thing that happened in 1998 is when you get a big push on some of the buildings, then you don't have to do so much. An example would be small Ben Franklin. Remember old Ben Franklin, for those of you around that long? We were putting a lot of money into that. Well, as soon as, we passed the referendum and we built new Ben Franklin, well, now that money could get steered towards the remaining buildings. So yes, Mr. Trail, that's how it works.
There was a little bit of talk about making some improvements at the high school in the concessions area and restrooms and things like that. Is that something you're going to be looking at as you redo the 5-year plan as well?
Yes, we're looking at that. We're actually looking at that. There's been quite a community cry for that. And I think if you look at it in the long range, I think you can look at it as sort of an investment, because what we find, even at the elementary level, when we build a playground, the first one, it's a little hard to get the money, to get the donations for it. But the second one, it's like, ooh, that one's so cool. I want my other child to have a new playground too. And they start to fall, and then they come rapid fire. I think we have an opportunity for the same thing to happen. We have quite a community outcry for, please give me some place to go to the bathroom instead of a porta potty. So I think we have an opportunity, if we look at the whole space, to bite off the first chunk. And included in the first chunk is this nice big blank donor wall saying, what about giving us some money? So we see it as an investment, as an opportunity to move forward on that project and to get that thing going with a portion of it being donated money.
Well, way back when we were talking about the referendum, one of the infrastructures we were talking about is putting all the under the parking lot stuff in now, instead of cutting through a brand new parking lot later. So sewer and that kind of stuff crossing over there will be much more efficient now.
That's another consideration, yes.
And that was one of the things we'd mentioned when we were talking about layouts and that kind of thing. Because you're going to get sewer. I don't think there's big enough sewer over there to handle that.
I think we'll have to go down to 51st Street. Straight. From the concession stand. I think we'll tap in at 51st.
Okay.
We'll go due west.
Anything we do on those sites will be looked at as if we were going to do something next year, but we won't be doing for 10 years. For example, if you look at the master plan, we have a larger gym, and we have other buildings that will go on to, that was initially proposed on the master plan for the referendum, and that is separate really from what we're talking about here, but that infrastructure has to be done now. And so the thinking on that has to be, okay, if we build a field house, okay, we don't want to be digging up a field house floor or sewer water or whatever to do that. And just so that nobody's confused, the donation part, as Mark said, to reinforce it, that kind of thing will probably come later. But we are developing a master plan for the athletic areas, which would include restrooms, concession stand, lights, bleachers, track. Jim, help me out. We just rattled off that whole thing. Huh?
Team room.
Team rooms. All kinds of things that have to go down there because, quite honestly, our facilities are in very poor condition. And we have had a number of people every year, particularly the restroom issue is I consider disgusting. And I think the people that come by when I'm standing there this year during ball games and say, is this the best you've got? And we're the only school in our conference in our area who uses porta potties for that purpose at a football game. So we heard this loud and clear at every World Cafe. There was concerns about athletic facilities. It was on the priority list. It wasn't as high up on the priority list, but it's time that we move on it.
Well, plus we have rentals on those, right?
Have what?
We have rentals. We have to pay for those.
Oh, sure. They're not extremely expensive, but I don't know. How many do we have out there, Mark? 6?
I think it's so, but we added sinks this year.
Upgrade. But that's the other part of it. We don't have running water out there at all, so our concession stand is another offshoot of this. They are, Sarah just sent me a thing today about the concerns they have just regarding contamination of not having soap and water out there. And it's to the point where you can't even use hand cleanser without washing it off with water, and that's just part of the deal. So it's a big project, but as Mark said, this is chipping away at one chunk, and there's probably 10 chunks that we think will come forward when the plan gets completed.
Do you envision putting anything in the 5-year plan of looking at the traffic flow or a secured entrance in Forest Park, or are those just too big of bites or chunks to bite off unless we do something with a referendum?
Well,
Or is it on there?
I'm sure they're on there somewhere.
Okay.
In that, they would be in that last section likely. Main office, there we go, number 112, main office, renovate to face entrance. That would be the secured entrance piece.
But you're talking traffic, so pretty.
Well, either or. Those are some
Well,
of the big things
okay.
we looked at the middle school and
Forest Park parking lot, redesign entrance loop and lot, item number 116.
but that line item right there is $500,000, which will completely blow any budget for the year.
Yes.
That's why it's probably not something you can do in its entirety through our regular budget. I just didn't know if there was anything that you had in mind about piecemealing into something like that. But
Well, I think when the time comes, I think you design it with that in mind, and
Yeah.
see what parts you do it first, and what parts you do second, and how you can phase it. Not unlike this athletic master plan, we see the first chunk as being just concessions. And then there's a track piece, and there's a bleacher piece, and there's a lighting piece, and there's quite a bit of land to move around out there.
What kind of dollar value are you looking at for this first phase of the concession area? Can you give me a range, or?
Well, we haven't gotten that far.
The architects are still putting those together.
Are we
for us.
talking about $1 million or something less than that?
No, I would say,
Less than $1 million? I would say.
oh, yeah, far
That's
less.
what-
I mean,
that's
to
what
do
I'm
the whole
asking.
project would be, to do everything would be about $3 to $4 million. So we're, several $100,000, depending on, laying the infrastructure for sewer is expensive, because part of this one is, much like the question that was asked earlier, it's not just a matter of putting a concession and restrooms up, it's creating the entrance to do that, because that's going to have to change. And then there's, the master plan so far has sort of a plaza area throughout that whole thing, so it addresses the baseball area, we're looking at softball potentially, some of those other things. So that, it wouldn't be just that, it would be that initial phase of concrete. Now, it might get 20 feet in and we would stop, and it wouldn't look very good for a while, but that's all we could do.
And we would probably see more of that when the budget comes through then? I'm assuming it would be part of the next budget that we see?
The hope is to have the concession stand ready for the next football season. That's our intention.
Let's make sure it's not just concession stand, it's restrooms, it's both.
Yes, I'm sorry, but the project, the first phase done in time for the 2013 season. We're on track to do that.
So summer construction.
Yes.
And you said this is out of our own budget or out of donations?
This first part will be out of Jim working our budget so that if we have existing funds that we're able to roll into next year's budget for completion after July 1, Jim, am I correct? Is that?
Right. That's exactly it. We'll be working on this, on planning for this all during this year and into next year. It wouldn't be donations that would be working on this first piece. You'd look at donations coming in because you did the first piece to finance some of the future pieces, but that wouldn't be a part of this first one.
And that you said is running sewer to 51st.
I didn't say that. Mark said that. It's
That would be
wherever-
my guess. We haven't had it engineered yet, Mrs. Evans, but I would say that really the closest place, and of course it has to run downhill, the closest place, it's actually further, the choices are two. It's probably 50 feet closer, would be all the way to the rec department entrance. That's where the sewer line is now. The second, but now you might have to really, because that's uphill, the better way is downhill to 51st. So 51st is already quite a bit lower than our...
But the caveat to that is we have to do that anyway because we're doing all those new parking lots and everything. So now's the time when we have to do those kinds of things, whether we did anything
Yes.
else. It has to be done now, which is part of the referendum dollars.
Yes.
Then I would just like to bring to the attention of the other board members that aren't aware of the Country Dale that doesn't have the sprinkler system in it, that, we're waiting to get the sewer connection to Country Dale.
We're waiting for water for that.
Right.
For water to be in North Cape Road. We currently have a school that, yes, it's on a well, Country Dale's on a well. There is no city water available. the school consistently exits children rapidly, under 2 minutes. Our fire drills are reviewed by the fire department, are actually observed by the fire department. The children are safe, we can get them out, but we don't have a sprinkler system in that building. We also don't have a sprinkler system in parts of the high school. We also don't have a sprinkler system in parts of Forest Park. There's also schools all over Wisconsin that don't have a sprinkler system. But our kids are safe, and there's very little wood in that structure. There's very little wood in any of our structures, but there's very little actual wood in Countrydale's structure. It's all steel and block and aluminum, and the roof deck is steel. So the children are safe. It's something that we're keeping our eye on, and when water is available in North Cape, we'll move on it quickly at that time. In fact, our original building permit from the 1998 referendum gives us, I believe it was 18 months to once the water was available in North Cape. So we'll have to do it right away, and we will do it right away. The question was first brought several years ago by a developer who tried to use that as an opportunity to get water to his property. And he tried to force us to bring water to us so that he could tap off of it and now make his land more marketable. The reality of it is, again, the children are safe. We have our monthly fire drills. Kids get out quick. We even block entrances. And we do this at all the schools, but we'll have the custodian stand there and go, I'm a fire, I'm a fire. And the kids have got to figure out, oh, I got to go to my secondary exit rather. So we do those kinds of things. They've also been known to grab a kid and say, you're with me. Now let's see if you figure out that I'm not out in the crowd. And they always do. They always figure out that little Jimmy isn't in the crowd because they take attendance right away.
Bottom line is that building is very safe. It's no less safe or no more safe than any of the buildings. As Mark said, the way this was initiated was to try to someone had an agenda to try to use the school district to make, I'll stop right there, but the point is, for us to have, we had two directions we could go, to North Cape, which would be short, which makes the most sense, but not unless there's water there for us, or to go all the way out to Forest Home, which is a prohibitive cost, and it's not even reasonable to consider that because it just doesn't make any sense at all.
Is there any other discussion, or are there any other questions? Well, thank you for the report.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
The next report is the Instructional Services Report, Professional Development. Dr. Desert.
Thank you. Jim's just going to set us up. I just have a few slides to use as I talk. While he's getting that ready, this is an annual report for information that we bring before the board, just so you have an understanding of what we do to professionally develop the teachers in our district. And we do have a framework around professional development, and the goal states all Franklin Public School staff will engage in high-quality professional learning, which will impact their daily work to improve student achievement. So that's the reason we professionally develop our staff. There we go. I put the 12, 12, 12 on the bottom just to remind you, it was Brett Favre Day in most of the schools, and the reason they did that was Aaron Rodgers. Oh, showing my age. Yep. Aaron Rodgers Day, and the reason they had Aaron Rodgers Day was they took it as an opportunity for a fundraiser, and just at little old Ben Franklin, I think the teachers brought in $12 and the kids brought in 12 cents, and they raised $400, and it's all going to one of Aaron's two charities, and the only one I can think of off the top of my head is the MAC Fund. So I know there's another one they're choosing through. So it was kind of just a fun thing, and I thought I'd point it out since I had the date up there. So professional development occurs in Franklin often and in many ways, in many forms. And just a reminder, I say this every year, but research says you need a minimum of 40 hours to make a shift. And as you've been learning as a board, we have lots of shifts to make in education due to the Common Core state standards and the expectation around delivering instruction in a personalized model. So we take advantage of every opportunity that occurs in the district. So we are working year-round, all the half-day in-services, when you combine those, that's about 28 hours. This year, we run 4 half-days and 2 full days to make up that 24 hours. And then the teachers are expected to collaborate approximately 45 minutes, and I said that's about 32 weeks a year, because even though they're there 36, oftentimes that time is taken away for situations that come up in the building that require meetings or reason to gather. And this time is sacred, the weekly collaboration time, because it's used to move through a professional development opportunity that's occurring, and not to prep and plan. Because I kind of did a little calculation, and if you think of a teacher teaching 180 days a year and 5 lessons a day, they're planning for 900 lessons a year. So they have work to do to prepare. So we have to allow them time to do that, but we also understand that moving us forward requires that professional development. How do we fund it? Well, one of the ways we fund it is through the ESEA grant, which is the Elementary and Secondary Education grant, which is also No Child Left Behind is kind of the phrase you hear around that. If you just look at, I put the whole grant up there so you could see what Franklin receives, but if you look at Title II, about 56.5 is what we're receiving this year, and that's the bulk of our training occurs. That's to pay for teachers if it's outside the school day and an extensive amount of time, or a long-term committee that they might serve on. And it's often for the trainers if we have to go outside of the district, which we rarely do, but we do have to do that occasionally. So that is where the bulk of our money comes from. The instructional services budget also encumbers money to cover some of the additional costs. A quick example would be, prior to a review, we send one teacher to a national conference because we need to do reading and learning around what is the trends and what does research say, and we need somebody to go out and find that, because it's difficult to gather that information without being in the know with your professional organization. So we send a rep for all the teachers. So that's just an example. And these grants, just so you're aware, are not they cannot be spent any way we choose. They are very scrutinized by the Department of Public Instruction, and they all have to meet the goals written below. Judy, who supports the work around the new teacher mentor program, is funded out of here, but again, it's very much scrutinized. So that's just an example. Title I basically pays for staffing in the district and no programming, because it's really quick. We only have 2 elementary title schools, Pleasant View and Countrydale, and we choose as a district to be equitable. It's one of Dr. Pat's big beliefs, and it's a good belief that all of our kids, regardless of the school, should have equitable programming. That's looked at by the federal government as supplanting if you offer the same programming in all buildings, so then we can't use funds to pay for that. So we can pay for the specialist staff that we have in the building, reading specialists and math, but again, it's all percentage based on how much they work with identified Title I students. So just a kind of example of that area.
Just a quick question.
Yep.
Have these numbers changed, though? They're different than the handout that's posted on the...
Oh, I wonder if I don't have the updated ones on here. I apologize. I asked Kathy, I was out of district when we had to send the final presentation. So what you have is accurate. It's about $300,000. That's accurate. This was last year, so I really wanted you to compare and contrast.
I see. It's $350,000, is that correct?
Right, yes.
And that was last year?
This was last year, so you can see the difference. Oh, thanks for catching that. So we do get a little bit more each year, but a very, very small amount compared to districts, because it's based on your free and reduced population of students that are in the district. You don't have to just serve those kids with the money, but that's how they determine the money. It's a very detailed formula. So learning opportunities, there's different types we use, and it equates to different hours. And what I always like to share with you as a board is, in the summer, when we have about 60 days or 12 weeks where the teachers are not officially on the docket or in session, and you can see during that time, we log all the hours that teachers put in for any committee work they're doing, any curriculum writing, any training, and we do a little bit of math, and it equates to about 409 days for this last year. So you can imagine the amount of work that's going on and the amount of training that occurs. And I think that's important for people to know, that our teachers do come in and spend a great deal of time in the summer getting ready to teach in the fall. And that's 227 different staff members that participated, and we have about 350 staff members in the district, so that's a large majority of our staff that are here being trained or working on some type of professional development or implementation plan. Franklin Credit courses, we do offer those courses, but not as many as we used to. We're in the process of reviewing our compensation model for teachers prior to the shift. Teachers use these courses. We always certify them through Viterbo. They use them to make their lane movements, but since we are looking at a different model right now, teachers are choosing to learn in different ways. And personalized learning for teachers has come about too, and they take it upon themselves to find ways to learn as well. And then another before, after, and during the school day. And I'm very, very pleased to say that in Franklin, our teachers, we believe in a peer-to-peer training or train-the-trainer model. We have quality educators trained to train most of our teachers on the work we're doing. We'll partner sometimes with a company like Carnegie Math, and they'll come in, but very shortly our teachers have that skill set and personalize it to Franklin needs and tend to do all the training ourselves. So our belief is to invest in a few people that can come back then and work with the teachers, because it's the teachers like that their peers are training them because it's applicable to their work and not some philosophical, more idealistic knowledge base that they're acquiring. So we do have many teachers. As a matter of fact, some of them are so fabulous, we have to keep them from other districts because word gets out. Every once in a while, we do share our talents with other people around the state, and then word gets out because our teachers do a great job. So that's just to give you a little bit of an idea of what goes on. So if someone says, when are teachers being trained and how are they being trained, this occurs. And it's all around, it's all purposeful training, because we believe that the training has to be based on research and best practices. It has to develop a collaborative culture, and there has to be an accountability strand. So the school improvement goals that Mike brings to you every fall, those goals are basically what helps us determine the training we're going to have. And then when I come forward to you with a group of teachers to implement a curriculum, obviously training has to go on. So those two areas drive what happens, and the implementation isn't really data-driven. It's a process opportunity, because there's many processes and products that have to be designed to implement a new curriculum. But when we come forward with the school improvement goals, those are data-driven, and we're always measuring the work we do so that if 4,000 students are being released into the community, we can explain to parents what's happening and how it's improving the education of their children. And then just, it's kind of fun. I always have my phone with and try to grab some pictures when I'm training, and you can see a little bit of what it looks like as they're working through their, sometimes there's materials from a company that they're working on. Oftentimes it's just collaboration. You see Sue Hansen looks like she's preaching to the choir up in the corner. And I wanted to let you know this training is for administrators, all of us as well. It's not just teachers, because we all need to be in the know on what's happening. This summer, middle school and high school math implementation, we had about 20 teachers. The first week school got out, they spent 40 hours getting ready to implement Carnegie Math. Social Studies is starting its review right now. If you look really close, you can see Luann Roberts. She even came in her wheelchair with a note from her doctor saying it was okay to sit in training. They're very dedicated when it comes to their training, and oftentimes they learn from each other. That's what a museum walk is. They do a collaborative process, and then they walk around and learn from each other during that time. And always at the end, it's really important you take some time to celebrate, especially when you go through a review. So you'll see world language all together smiling. with their little cake that we used to celebrate their work at the end of last year. And then just some other math trainings that will occur as time goes on, and group trainings during the summer. So basically, just a reminder, you hear the report every year, nothing much different, but just wanted to help you understand what we do in Franklin. So any questions? Thank you.
Thank you, Wendy. Next item is the Personnel and Policy Report. Mrs. Larson?
Thank you. We will be reviewing Policy 8410, School Board Development Policy, and I'm going to pass that off to Dr. Miller as she talked with the attorney from WASB concerning this policy.
Right, and I appreciate your patience with some of the revisions related to this policy. I did take an opportunity to contact Bob Butler with the WASB, just to have him take a quick look at it to make sure that it was worded in the best way possible to reflect the work of the board. So what you have tonight in board docs is the revisions as they relate to the 1997 draft. I think that would be the easiest way for you to review this policy in light of what has been. And essentially what I've done here is I've added some language just to clarify the difference between the policy itself and administrative rule and the function of the board in relationship to both of those things. As I was just kind of rereading it one more time, because I've read this a few times, sometimes the simplest policies can be more complex than you think. I believe as you get to the second to the last paragraph, the last sentence, action on the policy proposal may take place at the next school board meeting to which it has been noticed. What I really wanted to say there was action on the policy may take place at the school board meeting to which it's noticed, meaning there doesn't have to be a second meeting or a next meeting in which the vote would be taken. And this board has functioned like that for some time now, where the policy is posted and you take action on that same evening. So I would again suggest that we revise this draft by striking the word next. I do believe that makes that point clear. So that is another change to the policy. In 1997, it references the Personnel and Policy Committee. We no longer have a Personnel and Policy Committee. So these are some of the suggested changes that I felt worked with the way that the board has been operating. And then, again, I did have counsel from WASB look at it to ensure that I was reflecting what was appropriate in their opinion, as well as what state statute might require the board to do.
I have a question. Is it the idea that we want to have a policy that states the board creates policy, but the administration can create or revise or change the administrative rules without board oversight?
Without it going to a vote to the board, yes, correct.
Okay. Because my only concern with that is if I look at it in conjunction with the policy that was brought to the board last meeting, there was a change brought for securing legal counsel, as you know, and it was brought up and presented under an administrative rule, not under a policy change. So the way I'm reading this is if this policy were to be passed and if this policy as it's written would have been in place a month ago, there would have been an administrative rule change that could have been made that would have affected the board, but it was made at the administrative level.
I apologize, but my recollection of that was that it was all written in policy, that there wasn't administrative rule.
Well, that was one of the conversations that was had. Actually, the only change to the policy was in the administrative rule portion.
Okay.
So now we have the board that's set up as essentially the checks and balances on the administration, just the way that the state statute creates it. But this policy would put the administration in a position to be able to make changes to policy that could affect the board.
No.
No, the administration cannot amend policy. The administration would have the ability to amend the rules, which
Right.
are technically the procedures that relate to the policy.
I agree, but the way that the policy was brought up at last meeting was brought up under administrative rule. Which was, when I read this, you can understand my cause for concern, because now there's an administrative rule that can be put in place that would tell the board how they're going to secure legal counsel.
I think that the way that this version is written, however, does indicate that the administration would bring to the board the rules in terms of what they would deem appropriate or necessary for the board to take action on. So in that instance, it would be appropriate for the board to be involved in those rules. That was a board policy, pertained to the functions of the board. But, for example, the procedures related to filing a complaint for discrimination and how that is done may not be something that would come back to the board for approval. What's important is that the board approve a policy around discrimination and the fact that we would not do that. But the actual procedures for filing a complaint would not be deemed as something that should come to the board for you to review and decide upon. So again, if you look in the second bold printed paragraph, it says administrative rules may be presented to the board for informational purposes, but shall not be acted upon by the board unless deemed appropriate or necessary by the board or administration. So
Simplistically, the board sets policy, and administrators take that policy and implement it and operationalize it. It's really that simple. And those are the administrative rules. So if you say no drinking on campus, then that's the policy, then we make sure that that doesn't happen. How we make that happen is part of the administrative rule, but more in operational procedures.
And I don't know that I disagree with that, but again, I was just going back with the way the policy change was presented to us at the last meeting was specifically put in as administrative rules. So now I'm trying to apply how this change would have applied to that proposal. That could have been a change that could have been made that may or may not have come to the board. We may not have even known that there was an administrative rule change. And then something were to come up, something about securing legal counsel or anything else that would have happened. And then the board gets informed that there was an administrative rule that changed, and no, that's how this should happen. So I agree with what you're saying.
And I would say that the policies pertaining to the board, the 8,000 series, any of those rules the board should be involved in, determining and involved in any changes, because they pertain particularly to your function as a board. So those would come to you, those administrative rules. And that's why you saw them on that last policy. It would be inappropriate, I think, for the administration to make decisions about those procedures, because they're your procedures, because that category of policies pertain to the board and your function and your procedures. So that's why that came to you.
Maybe we need to just add an exception clause in here, except in the case of administrative rules that directly affect board operations or something like that, because it's almost like the board is its own administrator in a way. I don't know, that's just one thought.
I'd like to pass out something I found on WASB site about board policy. And it explains the administrative rules and the board policy. But, I mean, I agree that we don't need to be meshed in with the administrative rules. But right now, you'll see down my second asterisk, it says, it is important to keep in mind that if administrative rules are adopted by the school board, board action will be required every time the administrative rules are changed in any way. And right now, if you check out our policies, right now, every policy, the administrative rule says it's adopted at the end of the administrative rule. So I wouldn't mind doing this if we did it from here on with new policies or anyone that was revised, but I think we need to go through our policies and really see how we're interconnected. We have some policies such as superintendent's goals. Our policy is totally based on the administrative rules for that policy. Let's say the employee, I believe the employee handbook policy or grievance policy, that's a policy that really involves the board. There's quite a few policies if you go through. Some of the administrative rules do mention the board in the administrative rules. So I think we really would have to go through our current policies because everyone does say it was adopted right now. So according to this, we need to be careful about what we're doing.
Well, I think, if I could chime in on that, I think it also gets into if the board sets a policy, whatever that policy is, administrators can't modify it or change the policy. But it's up to us to implement it, and for the board to think that they should have the oversight to every single change we make, that's micromanagement, because now you're talking about operational procedures that are in place, and what all we're doing is carrying out the policy. You could take any policy we have and take the administrative rule, and depending on how the administration, we get in several meetings during the course of the year and know what policies are. Some will say, well, yeah, we do it this way, but let's change it to this way. If we have to keep coming back to the board with that, I don't think that's a reasonable expectation.
We shouldn't have to, but we need to correct our policies, because right now they're all adopted, so we need to separate them.
I would agree with that, and that's why I would not accept the asterisk you just read there, where it says that to me that says the board has to approve any change to administrative rule. I don't think that's reasonable.
Well, it says if it's adopted. So right now all our policies are adopted, so we need to correct that. We need to.
But you adopt
separate
policy,
that.
you don't adopt administrative rule.
Well, we have.
I think what Ms.
If you
Evans
check
is
it.
referring
I know
to
that goes
is the way that the policies are denoted. It has an adoption date on the policy page, and it has an adoption date on the administrative rule date. Administrative rules. So it appears that the board adopted the administrative rules because on the document it says adopted. But when I brought policies forward in the last 10 years, it wasn't for the board to adopt the administrative rules. It was for them to adopt the policy. But when that happened on the policy, that date was also put onto the rules. Doesn't mean the board adopted the rules. It means. But I understand where you're coming from.
It means the
there.
rules that apply to the adoption are in the administrative rules.
Right. The policy was adopted, and then the date changed on the rules as a result of that. So maybe that has to be changed. The way that we denote what happened with the rules maybe needs to be identified in a different way, so it doesn't say adopted, because we're not asking the board to adopt the rules.
Has there been things that have come up that the administration has been wanting to make changes and either couldn't timely because of the way the policy was written, or just the board didn't approve them, or
no?
Why? What necessitated the change? I guess is what.
I'm sorry.
Why is this policy brought forward to necessitate the change of?
Well, the first reason the policy
I understand the committee part.
brought forward is because it was on the original list that Ms. Larson and I put together, because it was from 1997.
Okay.
And frankly, in the last several meetings, there's been a lot of discussion about what should we be approving and what shouldn't we be approving. And that's why this language is here, because I was trying to convey that in the board's policy.
So what would be the proposal? I know Mrs. Klein brought something up about specifying which policy series would be in here, so we wouldn't have the conflict of, like we had with last meeting, where the changes that were proposed in the administrative rules really affected the board, and so we wouldn't want to have it set up where the administration would or could change administrative rules that would then have a check on the board, because
Sure.
that's just not the way the structure is set up.
I think you could simply add a sentence that with the exclusion of policies in the 8000 series, which pertain to functions of the board.
But this policy was 30, was this 3800?
Was it?
This is 3810.
Okay. Then it's going to be more
Securing
difficult
legal
to...
counsel.
There are some business policies and
Then it's going to be
personnel
very
policies.
difficult to
that-
discern that. Yeah, we could just say
I think
functions
it
of the
really
board.
boils down to making sure in the administrative rule that we clarify that adoption of the administrative rule does not mean board adoption. It refers to the adoption of the policy that the administrative rules are being carried out under.
It's more of a revision date
Yeah.
on the administrative
Right.
rules than it is an adoption date.
But Mr. Nielsen is getting at, he wants the administrative rules to come to the board for those policies that pertain to the functions of the board, operations, or I have to come up with the verbiage, but...
Well, what I'm getting at specifically is preventing a situation that could have come up at last meeting had this policy been in place 6 months ago, the policy that's brought up tonight. There was a change proposed under the administrative rules section that would have specifically limited the ability of the president to secure legal counsel, I guess it's simply. And again, I don't want to just focus on this, but that happens to be the case at hand. So the way this is written, what I'm worried about is there would be a change to an administrative rule that could be made that could have an effect or an impact on the board that the board may or may not even know about, and then find out about it after the
On the
fact.
way
So
in
I
which
think
the
we're on the
board
same page.
functions, and the way in which the board functions. would have
Right,
an
that
effect
wouldn't
on-
be, there wouldn't even be administrative rules attached to that. The way the board functions, that's their policy.
Right, right.
Like the one you're referring to, we can't have administrative rules that determine when the board, you know...
I agree, but my point is, this is a 3,800, 3,000 series policy, not an 8,000 series policy, and there was a proposed administrative rule that would have done just that. So I think we're saying the same thing, but we need to have language in here that just clarifies that a little bit. So I don't necessarily have a problem with recognizing the fact that the board makes policy and that the administration carries out that policy. Absolutely, I think we're on board with that.
And you do say in here that the district administrator or designee shall inform staff members, students of the administrative rules. So does that, although it doesn't say specifically the board, but if you...
It says that they'll inform of board policies and then develop administrative rules necessary to ensure...
I'm talking about the second underlying paragraph.
That's what I'm talking about. It says the district administrator or designee shall inform staff members, students, and other interested persons of board policies. And then, which means the administration develops administrative rules. And that's the way it should be. We should be informing our staff, and we put policy books in the buildings and so on. That's the means that we do that with.
I think I understand two issues. Ms. Evans' issue about the administrative rules and having them appear to be adopted by the board, and I also understand Mr. Nielsen's concern about the administration changing rules that pertain to the operations of the board. And I would like an opportunity to kind of draft some new language, and then I'll bring it back again. Perhaps Ms. Larson could work with me on that as well. I'd appreciate that.
Certainly.
Here's another policy, for example, 4215, Board Administrator Staff Professional Development Training. That talks about professional development training, going to conferences and things like that. That's in the administrative rules also. So it's just little things like that.
I agree with the concept of what we're doing just to spell it out. So I think we're all...
It does say,
looking in the
but
right
shall
direction.
not be acted upon unless deemed appropriate. So you have the out in here. It's just a matter of clarifying where, when we would be expected to be aware of the rules, I think.
So then we'll bring that back then?
Sure, I'd be glad to do that. There's no urgency to it. It's here because it was an old policy, so.
Okay, thank you. Next item is the item E, Treasurer's Report. Mrs. Klein?
Leave that one part. The
Oh,
adoption
I'm
or
sorry.
ratification of the
Ratification.
2011-2012 SOEA base wage contract.
Okay, that is an action item. Dr. Miller?
Well, the board had discussed with the administration the bargaining parameters for the 2011-2012 base wage contract, and the administration has offered that as a settlement to the union, and they have ratified that settlement. It's 1.64. It's the CPI for last year, and I am asking that the board also ratify that as a wage increase for the 2011-2012 SOEA base wage contract.
Would anyone like to make a motion on that?
I would make that motion.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion by Mrs. Larson, second by Mrs. Witkowski for the ratification of the 2011-2012 SOEA base wage contract of 1.64. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Sure. Mrs. Larson?
Aye.
Mrs. Schluter?
Aye.
Mr. Trailer?
Aye.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
I also say yes.
Motion carries. Thank you. And now we have item E, Treasurer's Report.
Okay, thank you. Just one moment, I was switching back and forth between agendas and I can log back in. You've got it handy, Jim? Okay, excuse me. The Treasurer's Report for December 2010, general fund balance is $8,383,716. Debt service fund balance is $1,788,585,000. And prior to January 23rd, we anticipate cash requirements in the amount of $6 million for accounts payable and for the December 15th, December 31st, and January 15th payrolls.
Could I make a correction? Unless I heard it wrong, you said 2010, it should be 2012 at the beginning?
Did I say
Anybody else hear that
2010?
wrong?
Yeah.
I probably did.
You're correct, Steve.
And soon it's going to be 2013.
Just to make sure.
No, thank you
I
for
thought I heard it,
correcting.
but I won't.
Thank you. Item 10 on the agenda, the chair will now entertain a motion to enter into closed session to discuss performance evaluation data for the district administrator pursuant to Wisconsin statute 19.85 sub 1 sub C. Do I hear a motion?
I'll make a motion.
Motion by Mr. Trailer, second.
I'll second.
Second by Mrs. Schluter. Is there any discussion? Hearing none, can we have a roll call, please?
Yes. Mrs. Schluter?
Aye.
Mr. Trailer?
Aye.
Mrs. Evans?
Aye.
Mr. Nielsen?
Aye.
Mrs. Klein?
Aye.
Ms. Larson?
Aye.
I also vote yes.
Motion carries. We'll take a 5-minute recess. and then enter. Next item on the agenda is the board meeting debriefing. Thank you, Mr. Trailer. Would any board member care to make any comments about the meeting?
Amy, thank you for organizing the Friends of Franklin Awards. It's always very inspiring to hear
It
what
was nice
people
to
are
do.
doing. And we had such a varied mix of things that people were doing too, which I thought was very meaningful.
It was nice to do. One of the women was tearing up, and when I see other people tear up, it's a problem. So it was all I could do not to, I was like, whoo, but it was all right. It was fun.
As a board, I don't know if you had a chance to see, we had those new certificates. Amy, you saw them before tonight, didn't you?
They're nice.
Yeah.
Nice foil, professional.
But I guess my question was, is we do that and then we give them each a pen. Do you all feel that's enough? Because we can get coffee mugs and that kind of thing too. We don't give out a boatload of them, so it wouldn't be an exorbitant cost, but
And are
Their
they,
name's
are
on
they
the plaque.
aware that their name is on the plaque? Do they know that?
I don't think they do.
I don't think we should that. We should probably
What I
say
do is
that
I think
too.
we'll send them a formal letter
They used to get
to
the letter.
congratulate, and we'll make sure that the plaque gets their name
Yeah.
on it.
Yeah. I think it's more about the recognition than it is about an object that they receive. I think a
I think so.
pen and a certificate is nice.
Yeah.
Can we put a picture of the plaque on the website?
A picture of the plaque?
On the website, so you can see.
I wonder if that
We
would
put
show
their
up if we
picture
could
on
make
the
it big
website.
enough. We can look at it.
Because, you're right, it's
just
about the
take 'em-
recognition.
Yeah.
So if-
You wouldn't necessarily need to show the names. You could have a picture of the plaque, but then have the names listed below as who's on the plaque.
volunteers.
You wouldn't have
Sure.
to actually focus in on that.
Yeah.
That would be difficult with that.
What would you think about the end of the year, maybe the May or possibly the June meeting, of bringing all the people for the year in, just for a celebration? is that overkill? You know, we do that for our volunteers in our schools.
Yeah.
But these were, and maybe that's enough, they get it there. I'm just throwing out some ideas.
Well,
But so they don't always get to attend because it's sometimes during the day at 2 o'clock in the afternoon and you can't always miss work.
Yeah, yeah.
I don't know. I'd have to think about that. I mean,
Yeah.
they are committing some of their time to already come here once. I don't know if, I don't know how I think about that.
It'd be nice if one of us could show up at the volunteer event.
I got a lot of bad ideas sometimes, I just throw it out.
No, I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Are you baking?
I'm just not sure about it.
Would that mean you're baking for the,
By baking?
Yeah.
You wouldn't want anybody to come to that.
Get it?
We'll see. Are there any other comments on the meeting?
That went well.
Okay, then item 12, future agenda items. We have the administration evaluation and recommendations for January 9th. Also, Mr. Milzer had emailed us that he was going to talk about, on January 9th, the insurance benefits, retirement benefits. He confirmed that with me tonight. And then enrollment, Chapter 220 update for January 23rd, and then the assessment report for January 23rd. Is there anything else?
I'm going to fill in for Tim at the WASB convention as a delegate, and I just got this packet tonight. So I'm going to, probably over Christmas, I'll be diligently reading this, but I believe the convention is before our 23rd meeting, so I was wondering if on the 9th I could bring these to the board and we could have a discussion
Yes.
on the
Do
resolutions.
you want me to take those and have the PDF and have them sent out to everybody?
I think that's
That'd be great.
Yeah.
So we could review them
That's a great
beforehand.
idea.
And thank you for filling in, by the way.
Oh, not a
I
problem.
appreciate that.
Thank you.
Who's all going to convention? Can we ask that?
I'm going.
Yeah, I'm going at least one day, maybe 2 days. Yeah.
So that's 3.
Okay, then is there a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the
that
motion.
Motion by Mrs. Klein, second
I'll
by
second.
Mr. Nielsen. Is there any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstention? The meeting is adjourned at 8:12.